Education, Selective, Specific, Compensatory by Michael West, Indian Educational Service, with a foreword by Honourable Mr. W. W. Hornell, Director of Public Instruction, Bengal, Longman Greene and Co. My dear West, you have asked me to write a foreword. I can contribute nothing, but I must in gratitude comply. Education is just one of those problems which are so personally vital that the ordinary Englishman who is fortunate enough not to depend for his livelihood on anything connected with pedagogy is irritated by the very recollection of their existence. He eyes the schoolmaster with suspicion, as a potential bore of amazing importunacy, while he regards the organizer of education, especially in India, as, at best, a charlatan, at worst, a fanatic. Mr. Hornell, said a charming lady to me once, I had only made her acquaintance some 5 minutes previously. They tell me that you and Messrs. Whiteaway and Laidlaw and Co. are ruining India. The latter provide cheap European clothes, while you purvey indifferent education at a shameless, inadequate figure. I had just started on a well-rounded period of defence when I looked up and the lady had fled. A peculiar difficulty confronts one who comes to this country to deal either as a teacher or an organizer with the practical problem of the education of the youth of modern India. At first sight, the Indian high school or university college seems to contradict everything that one ever imagined about India and its peoples. The peculiar merit of this book of yours is, as it seems to me, that in it you have risen above the perplexities with which you are surrounded and have asked yourself the vital question: what is the motive which impels the parent as such to lay out money on the education of his children? Any honest attempt to solve this question will explain why the masses in Bengal are demanding English education, why my Khansama's son, for my Khansama is a capitalist, is wasting his own vitality and his father's substance in a persistent yet but vain attempt to pass the matriculation examination. My Khansama is in this matter a gambler. Education is to him for rising, not for living contentedly in that state of life to which it has pleased God to call him. This is the new wine which is being poured by the British Raj into the old skins of Indian social organization, and the difficulties to which the use of education as a selective agency has led are not confined to India. The declass is everywhere, and it is not India alone which is proclaiming a pleasure-loving world that the advantage of the state is not necessarily the advantage of any single member of it. Some months ago I was forced to appear before Indian Industries Commission. I know nothing whatever about industries, nor was I able to understand the list of questions with which that laborious body heralded its descent upon this much harassed presidency. The receipt of the manuscript of this book rescued me from a dilemma which promised to be a painful one. I analyzed the general educational problem according to your formula, and then, having quoted your description of the working of primary and secondary schools in Bengal, I boldly defied the Commission to consign me and my vapourings to the limbo of the superfluous by insisting that an attempt to understand the educational system of the Presidency of Bengal, how it arose, how it is working, and whither it is tending, is not irrelevant to their inquiry, from which, thank heavens, the question of technical education has been excluded. Now that your book is about to be published, I am going to defy the public to say that the study of the origin, purpose, achievement, and development of the school system of Bengal is not of practical interest to all who are looking on at the evolution of India, whether in hope or with fear. I am, yours sincerely, W. W. Hornell, The Bengal Club, Calcutta, 27th March, 1917. Contents. Forward. Page V. Part 1. Chapter 1. Selective Education. Page 3. Chapter 2. Specific Education. Page 56. Chapter 3. Compensatory Education. Page 101. Chapter 4. Education and Political Ideas. Page 123. Part 2. Chapter 5. The Development of Primary Education in Bengal. 143. Chapter 6. Secondary Education in Bengal. Page 169. Part 3. Chapter 7. Deductions. Page 213. Much of this page appears to be missing, however. Chapter 1. Systems do not have purposes. They arise, and the purpose is added as an afterthought to explain existing phenomena. It has been said that the educational system of England aims at educating the elector. Reference 3. Marriott, England since Waterloo, page 397. Veitch. Empire and Democracy, page 54. But it includes no effective teaching as to the nature of government. Reference 1. Fabian Ware, Educational Foundations of Commerce and Industry, Monre, Brief Course in the History of Education, page 405 to 6. The history in the curriculum is weak and out of date. No modern problems are treated. If any of these things are by chance spoken of in the classroom, it is as a side shows as superfluity of conscientiousness by an energetic teacher. The purpose of educational system is not insisted upon. It is not an essential subject in the curriculum. Similarly, it is stated in the Dispatch 1854 that education in India is intended to cure certain grave moral and social evils. But it would be very difficult to trace in the then or in the present primary or secondary curriculum any subjects which directly reflect this purpose. Perhaps Mahajani loans and sanitation might be so considered, but then these subjects are seldom really taught. The idea in the mind of the giver of education is as a rule very vague, but even where distinct, it makes very little difference. The real determinant of education is the recipient. An education may be provided, but if no one receives it, it comes to nothing. Whereas if a number of people want a certain education, a school is certain to arise. The idea in the mind of the recipient is usually a great deal clearer than the idea in the mind of the giver. The bulk of the recipients are uneducated manual laborers. The givers are educated professional men. They are for the most part wealthier, more influential. They lead happier and more refined lives. There are two fundamental differences between the two groups which produce this difference of condition. One difference is birth, and the other is education. One cannot expect that the lower, less comfortable group, consisting of parents demanding benefit for their sons, will admit birth as a valid reason. The difference remaining is education, consisting of two parts: nurture, received at home, the result of personal influence and surroundings, and schooling. The nurture is less obvious. Everyone has nurture. Both sides of this argument have nurture, therefore it must be the schooling that makes the difference. I need hardly point out the fallacy in the argument, not only the underestimation of heredity and the total neglect of home influence, but also the overestimation of schooling as compared with nurture. The motive of the recipient is then to achieve that unknown element, education, which makes the upper classes different from himself. In other words, he looks on education as a means of elevating his son into the professional grades. Redistribution. Society is based upon specialization and division of labor. Division of labor is based upon individual differences. Reference 1, Busher, Industrial Evolution, Chapter 8. If all men could make shoes equally well, there would be little need of a shoemaker. Individual differences are of two kinds, hereditary and acquired. A man may differ from others because he has a special aptitude for fine manual work, or he may differ from others in that, being a shoemaker, he is specialized or warped in knowledge by the knowledge of his craft, and in the skill by the skill of his craft. Contrast him, for instance, with a backwoodsman, manufacturing for himself all his requirements, a man so far as possible not warped at all. Contrast him again with a chemist, a man warped in a different direction. It is to be noticed that the hereditary individual differences are general, whereas the acquired individual differences are specific. Reference 1. Thorndike, Principles of Teaching, Chapter 3. The born shoemaker differs from other men in inheriting a general aptitude for manual work. He did not inherit a special aptitude for making shoes. His aptitude might be devoted to watchmakings. To what particular art it is devoted will depend on his early circumstances and experience. On the contrary, the acquired aptitude is specific. The acquirement is of a special aptitude for shoemaking does not give a general manual skill, so that a man who by much practice had made himself a good shoemaker could thereby be an equally good watchmaker or tailor or anything else. In order to obtain the maximum efficiency from the division of labor, it is clearly necessary to arrange that the acquired difference may be based upon the inherited difference. To arrange that the man with a special aptitude for fine manual labor may have opportunity to specialize himself in some branch of fine manual labor, and not, for example, in coolie work or clerical work, for which by his real nature he is not greatly gifted. As each generation passes away and a new one comes to take its place, there are a number of places left vacant: shoemakerships, watchmakerships, clerkships, etc. Each place requires special powers, special hereditary aptitude, and special acquired adaptation. At the same time, a number of infants are being born into the world who have got, as they grow up, to fill these constantly occurring vacancies. The problem is how to sort these new workers. How shall each be allotted to a vacancy so that his acquired difference may be based upon his hereditary difference? If heredity was so simple and invariable in its action that the son of a good shoemaker would always inherit,